first of all, there's leadership and then there's management.
Okay, so let's distinguish that one.
Okay, so both of them have to do with the future. So a leader who makes a difference is somebody who sees a future that isn't going to work. The future that we're headed towards isn't a future that people want. You know, there are many futures. There are futures that are feared for. People fear the future. There are hoped for futures. People hope that something will happen in the future. There are resigned futures. Futures people live into where they're like, well, what are you going to do? So there are all kinds of futures, but there's not one future in the world that's certain. In fact, you could say these days, most of the futures people are very present to the uncertainty of the future they're living into.
Yeah.
Yeah. So leaders are people who are willing to deal with that. Managers, people who manage, are people who are see that the kind of future that we're headed towards is pretty okay. There's nothing that needs to be done with it. You know, things are fine and the business is fine and the country is fine and my family is fine and my soccer team is fine. So I don't need to do anything to interrupt the future we're headed towards because it's pretty good. And you know what? There are futures like that. From time to time, you and I have futures like that. I'm getting married and I love who I'm going to get married to. And why the hell do I need any leadership? See, leadership is really designed to interrupt futures.
Okay.
Leaders are people who
interrupt the predictable futures.
That's right.
Okay.
So that's one definition of leadership. Leadership is somebody who will step up to interrupt, as you said, a predictable future that none of us really are too thrilled about.
Okay.
Managers are people who know that to mess around with the current future isn't good. So they're going to manage and put the structures in place and the processes in place and the people and the resources in place to make sure quite the opposite. We don't mess with the future. So neither are better. Neither are better.
They're just different.
They're just different. But if you look into the world today, there aren't too many futures that people are real happy about.
Yes, we could say there are not many predictable futures people are excited about and want to keep.
Absolutely. There's not a lot of futures that people want to keep. Yeah, like I said that. So but the world is trained for management. You know, the world is trained to kind of sustain the level of comfort we've become used to, not rock the boat, not interrupt, not stick your neck out. You know, if you just look, if you're listening on the call, look in your own families, look in your relationships. The way human beings are built is to sustain, is to keep the relationship the way it is for a fear of not being liked, not belonging, rocking the boat. You know, I got people in my life I deal with that. There's a friend of mine I have very little leadership with. And I just realized that yesterday in a conversation with one of my coaches. I have so little leadership with this guy. You know, I would rather watch him ruin his life and his kid's life because I know he deals with some of his parenting. You know, part of being a human being is to be a coward. And, you know, and part of being a human being is to pretend you and I are not cowards. But unless you acknowledge that you and I are cowards, from time to time, we are just, damn it, we're cowardly.